Hello, everybody. We're going to get started. Okay, we're going to get started. Going to need you to sit down.
I may pull out my old Jewish camp counselor tricks if they don't sit down.
We might have to do the clap. Do you hear me clap once?
Sheked bavaka. Sheked bavaka. Hey.
It's kind of worked.
It was Camp Swig.
Oh, it's working. It's working.
It was Swig.
Was Swig, now Newman. Now we love camps. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Hold on, I'm arranging. Okay. Great. See some people trickling in, but we're gonna begin. All right, good morning. I am Danielle Foreman. I'm the Chief Strategy and Impact Officer at the Federation in the Bay Area, and I'm excited for this panel. The title of the session, which I hope you all read, is Antisemitism in 2026, New Frontiers, New Responses. And I want to take that framing seriously because both of these things matter and are signaling something particular about the time we're in. The anti-Semitism we are confronting today is not simply more of what we've always faced. It's moving faster and in new terrain. And the responses it demands, legal, political, communal, are ones our community is having to pursue more aggressively and strategically. What makes this moment different is not just the scale, it's the complexity. Anti-Semitism today does not come from one direction and has become pervasive in person and amplified online, making it harder to confront and easier to excuse. This panel will help us think through all of this and prepare you for lobbying this afternoon. Two of Jewish California's signature bills seek to address anti-Semitism and its impacts. AB 2664, the Safe Worship Zone Act, and AB 1836, the Nonprofit Security Grant Program. Let me start by introducing our panelists, and then we'll move into discussion and Q&A at the end. Hi, Rich.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
You got like a great shout out from Lieutenant Governor.
I will tell you this, I worked very closely with the Lieutenant Governor over the years because she is on the Board of Regents, and she was a tremendous supporter of what we were trying to do. And I'll get into it a little bit, but it was a very challenging time, and we have a lot more challenging times ahead. But I will say that Jewish California, formerly JPAC, was instrumental in helping in a lot of ways. So I will get into that in a minute.
So great to hear. Well, thank you. Formally, your intro is that you served as the president of the University of California Board of Regents during one of the most turbulent periods for Jewish students at the UC campuses in recent history. And you bring an insider's perspective on one of the largest university systems in the world and how they've tried and sometimes struggled, gonna be honest, to respond to all of what's going on. So thanks for being here. Assemblymember Rebecca Barrakahan represents District 16. Ooh.
Some voters in the
Yay.
room.
A Bay Area district where many Jewish families live and work. She's the author of AB 2664, the Safe Worship Zone Act, and a member of the Legislative Jewish Caucus. Thank you.
Before you move on, can I just say something nice about Rich? So I was serving in the legislature. I've been here 8 years, so I was here before and after October 7th. And the Board of Regents under his leadership could not have been better partners and allies in ensuring that the UCs remained the free speech zones that every single one of us agrees to, but also protected students and gave them access to the classroom, which sounds basic, but was actually something they had to fight for. And as someone who represents a lot of UC Berkeley alum and professors, I go annually and meet with Jewish students on campus, and I will tell you that in my 8 years, I have never heard such positive statements about how they feel on campus, and that all traces back to your leadership. And so it has shifted the experience on campus for students in ways that are incredibly positive, and I couldn't be more grateful as, frankly, a mother.
You're making him blush.
I'm blushing, and I will tell you, none of this could happen without the partnership we have with the legislature, specifically the Jewish caucus, specifically people like yourself who have done so much. So thank you.
Thank you.
Sue Kahn, thank you for being here. You're the president of the NorCal Jewish Labor Committee, which works to strengthen the relationship between the Jewish community and organized labor. And Sarah O'Quinn, the U.S. Director of Public Affairs at the Center for Countering Digital Hate, which has produced some of the most rigorous research on how anti-Semitism spreads online, how platforms have responded or failed to, and what laws and policies have actually moved the needle. Your research and the work you do is fantastic. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much.
All right. Let's start with everybody gets to answer a question. So each of your work is in a distinct area, which is why David and Evan and the JPAC team, or Jewish California, team, put you all on this panel. Higher education, the legislature, labor, and the internet. What does anti-Semitism look like in your world right now? And what would have been unimaginable 5 years ago? You get to go first.
I get to go first. First of all, before I start, I have to say this, which is, it's such a pleasure to come here. This is my first, summit that I've been to. I've been active with JPAC in the past, but never been to a summit. I sit down at dinner, and we start going around the room. Guess who's there? My second cousin, who I haven't seen in 50 years. My father and her father. This is Mickey Whitten, who's somewhere here, or maybe she's not in this. Maybe. Okay, there she is. Okay. We're literally, really close cousins and close friends. They were first cousins, and I haven't seen Mickey since then. So, I mean, what a great way to start my day. I also want to shout out to the University of California people who are here, Meredith Turner, Aaron Baum, and others, who have been good partners with us. And I will explain to you that many of the things that are happening, should I just talk a little bit about what we did and then also or how do you want me to answer that question? Because I have some things that are kind of explosive that I want to talk about that we need to get the elephant in the room out. We need to our next set of issues that we have to deal with. But
then go for it.
Okay, so the first thing I'd like to say is that because of people like Rebecca and SB 1287, when that was a JPAC-sponsored bill a couple of years ago, when we were dealing with the encampments, which were a real unfortunate thing, and the lieutenant governor talked about it, we had to really come in and do time, place, and manner restrictions. And fortunately for the legislature, backed us on this. And I think that's a lot better today. I think because of the time, place, and manner, the Office of the President has implemented these things. And so I think that's been a positive. The other positive thing is we had to make some really important leadership changes. Some of these were natural because chancellors were retiring, but I will tell you right now, we have a new chancellor in Riverside. We have a new chancellor in Santa Barbara. We have a new chancellor at Berkeley. We have a new chancellor at UCLA. And we have a great chancellor at UC San Diego already, Pradeep Khosla, who was the best with encampments. So those 5 new leaders are much more equipped in dealing with the problems. And we've already seen changes at UCLA and at Berkeley, 2 places which handled the encampments miserably. And it was horrible what we did. And of course, I have many text messages between myself and these chancellors, which is subject to litigation. But I will tell you that I was appalled at how we handled it and denied access and so forth. I think all of those things have gotten better with new leaders and new rules. But the one thing I will say, and I can maybe mention it now and then move on, and we can talk about it later, we have another problem, and that is our academic units making political statements. It is a huge problem that needs to be worked on. Now, let me just say this. We did something minor. Regent Jay Suris and myself put together a thing of not allowing these political statements on websites, which were prevalent amongst, if you went to any website, University of California, certain departments, they had all these anti-Israel things going on. We did do some work there, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Academic units should not be making political statements. That does not mean that faculty can't. I have no problem with faculty, but academic units. During the UCLA situation, 33 academic units demanded amnesty for protesters, including those that blocked access to people trying to get into class because they were Jewish. 25 endorsed student protest demands. 13 supported anti-Israel. There's one, you can go on right now to a UC Santa Cruz statement where one of the departments is basically claiming that the tunnels were a place where Palestinians could go to. That's why they made the tunnels, not because this is misinformation that's getting out there. Anyway, I will move on to another thing. But we have a lot of work to do on that, and it needs to be enforced, and I think the regents will do that in the next year.
Thank you. I definitely want to come back to that part, but go ahead, Assemblymember.
It's what could I not have imagined? I was raised by Holocaust survivors, so I can't. My imagination is deep, but I don't know that I thought that I would see the prevalence of anti-Semitism. I don't think I thought I would see. I mean, I'm sure all of you saw it, but when we had a school in the South Bay where they proudly posted a swastika made out of people with a quote from Hitler with their names attached to it. They weren't even embarrassed to be spouting Nazi propaganda online. Like, that isn't a world I thought I would be living in the Bay Area when I was growing up there. And so things are different for sure today than I would have imagined. For me, as an elected and proud Jewish woman, we get a lot of hate. My staff actually only tells me when they know it's a credible threat, because it got so bad that I just, for my own mental health, they handle it. The sergeants handle it. We have security. We no longer have events without security present because it is so prevalent. And, that's really sad. Like, I don't want to live in that world. I want to be someone who can go out into the public and not worry that people hate me for who I am and what I believe in. But I also, you saw Don Addis and Rick Zabur last night. I know they were honored. The amount of hate they have gotten has just been so appalling. And Rick Zabur isn't Jewish. He's just the greatest Jewish ally we could ever imagine. He often, and I couldn't say that more clearly, he sits in the Jewish caucus and says to us, "You guys don't ask enough. Like, what is wrong with you?" Because, we're Jews. We don't, we often are like, it's okay. But, he pushes us really hard, and he is amazing, and he has gotten a lot of hate for it. I think the thing that has surprised me the most, having served in the legislature starting in 2018, when the Jewish caucus stood with the Latino caucus in the wake of the first anti-immigrant push by Trump, and we have continued to do so through the pandemic with our Asian colleagues, was I imagined when our time came and we needed our colleagues to stand with us, that 100% would stand with us. Now, as you saw, the vast majority stood with us, but there were definitely people who didn't, and that made me incredibly sad. And so I think that we have a lot of work to do to get people to understand that hate is hate, and there's no difference between hate against us and hate against others. And in fact, as we know better than most, if they're coming for us, they're coming for you next.
I'm on?
You're on.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sue Kahn, Northern California Jewish Labor Committee. We are a newly formed committee, so I'll give a little background to who we are. Matt Broad is our Sacramento connection. I'm Sue Kahn, I'm the Contra Costa County connection. Susan Kitchell is in San Francisco. Mark Maloof is in Marin County. Richard Hubler is in San Mateo. And Tamar Armstrong is up in Humboldt County. Did I miss anyone? Rudy Gonzalez is also in Contra Costa County. And so what I've tried to do is bring together representation from all over Northern California, and some of us, I'm education, Matt and Mark are trade unions, and Rudy. So we've tried to cross all of the different labor groups. That's what Northern California Jewish Labor Committee is. We are currently doing a membership drive because we also feel that numbers speak volumes. So join us. That's my pitch. Join us, donate to us. And personally, when October 7th happened, I was retired. Okay, I was out of education. I had been working with, however, I had a shoe in the door. I was considering quitting my part-time job, which is co-executive director of an administrator union. That's the union connection in the West Contra Costa Unified School District. October 7th happened. Initially, I was in shock, like many of us, and didn't sleep for 2 nights, waiting to hear from my cousins in Israel. And went to a retired educator luncheon where I was greeting people and saying, "How are you?" And they would say, "How are you?" And I'd say, "Not so good." One of my closest friends said, "Well, what did you think was going to happen?" So my awakening to what was going on in the community was pretty shocking. And immediately, after I got over the shock, I tried to find out what is going on, because I really didn't know. I decided to keep my job because that gave me a window directly into education. We're a 50 school district, so we're a pretty large district. It gave me a direct connection to what was happening in education. So I decided to stay there because pretty quickly I started hearing from teachers, like, help, there's a Palestinian flag showing on the doors of other teachers' classrooms. People are ignoring me now that used to be friends of mine, things like that. And so it just was an explosion of a cry for help. So I tried to figure out what I could do. I knew the ADL was out there. My Jewish connection was not as strong as it probably should have been. And I knew the ADL was out there. I was raised a secular Jew, but since then I've been on almost every shul in the Bay Area, finding connection myself, going to events, joining Stand With Us. I'm also on the advisory board for Northern California Stand With Us now. So yay, Stand With Us. Amazing support from all the directions that I pursued. So that was, the before and the after. And I don't know what was, probably what was most surprising was my personal relationships. Those who blocked me on Facebook. I reached out. I live in Richmond, so I reached out to the Richmond mayor when I saw what he was posting. Oh, okay. Good reaction. Okay, good audience reaction. And I knew him because he was a former teacher. And I said, "Hey, Eduardo, let's have coffee. I'd like to." And then the mistake I made is I said, "Let's talk about the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, because I think we need some guardrails and some definition clarity." His response was, "Great, Sue, we can talk about apartheid." And I said, "Well, maybe now is not the time to have coffee." So I just kind of left it there. And then he went on his social media on another page and said, "Sue Khan refuses to meet with me." So I went, okay, great. Pretty soon after that, he made the Bondi post. That Bondi, if you don't know, he said that Bondi was a false flag operation. And then JCRC got involved, and it became an explosion of stuff after that. But yeah, so personal relationships, people started showing their true colors, and lost many friends, but I also gained many friends, and I think that's the silver lining. I'm happy to and very honored to be here. This is my first Jewish California conference. It will not be my last.
Thank you.
And Jewish California, we've joined, Northern California Jewish Labor Committee has joined with Jewish California, so I think we're strength in numbers and look forward to that continued relationship.
Thanks, Sue. Sarah.
Thank you so much. So I work for the Center for Countering Digital Hate. We are a research organization that looks at the harms to users on social media and artificial intelligence systems, such as chatbots. And as you just heard from the remarks from my fellow panelist here, anti-Semitism is most certainly on the rise when it comes to online. And it's a lot, if everyone's here in their own personal experiences, you're probably thinking of phrases like misinformation. That is one of the key drivers that is really turning young people against the Jewish community, and what is the responsibilities of the platforms themselves. And it's important to realize that misinformation, we're also talking about, defamation, accusing people of crimes that they didn't commit, associate the false flag, conspiracies, spreading of this kind of information. And it's not just about the words on the page or on the platform. As we all know, when you have online hate, it leads to real life violence. And so it's important to both study how online hate is leading to real life violence, but also the reactions to real life violence and attacks, and how the experiences of the Jewish community when those attacks happen. And I can talk a little bit about later as our study looking at the Manchester attacks on the synagogue in London. And then, the importance that these are on mainstream platforms. That this is a leadership failure from the tech bosses themselves, that Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk are making intentional moderation decisions about combating anti-Semitism, and the importance of calling out that bad leadership. And then to answer your question about what wasn't possible 5 years ago, to give a little bit of hope, is that we are seeing a serious fight back against big tech right now at both the state houses and at the federal level. I want to give a shout out to the moms right now who are up in DC today doing a press conference calling for protecting their kids online, the importance of chipping away at Section 230 and the platform responsibility when it comes to online harms, and to build coalitions between that online harms are affecting seniors, vulnerable populations, children, parents, and also the Jewish community, and the importance of solidarity. And so that's to bring some hope to the conversation.
Great. Thank you. Rich, let's go back to you, and I don't know why everyone sat in exactly the order that I had planned on the questions, but we'll bop around. Okay, so maybe you can expand a bit on kind of what you were talking about with academic freedom and some of the other work that Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis kind of mentioned at the opening session, and kind of how was that implemented? What do you think is still needs more work to be done? Where do you think was kind of the greatest success within some of the work that you implemented during your time at the Regents?
Well, I think, first of all, I never really answered the first question, what I was most surprised at, and I'll give you two things really quickly. One, that people were denied access at UCLA for being Jewish, being questioned whether they're a Zionist or whether they're Jewish, and not being allowed. Now, this only happened for a very short period of time, apparently. But I would be getting these posts on social media, and I had to constantly call the chancellor, what are we doing about this, And so that was disappointing. The other one was at a regents meeting. There was a huge pig that was put out in front of our meeting, and it had it had money, and it was clearly anti-Semitic, paper mache or whatever it was. And I will tell you this, we had incredible leaders, not just from the Jewish community on the board. We had a few people that are Jewish on the board, but John Perez, former Speaker of the State Assembly and former Chair of the Board of Regents, is phenomenal. Rebecca knows. And he really helped us. We were going to go out there and destroy it ourselves, but we were not allowed to. So those were the things that were the most disturbing to me during my tenure as chair of the board when we were doing all this. Again, I'll go back to say that, the regions themselves, to a T, were really supportive of what we were trying to do. As a matter of fact, I made a comment at one point in our room. I said, in front of all the protesters who were there, every single person on this Board of Regents is probably a Zionist. And nobody questioned that at all. And we have many African American and also Latino leaders that sit on the board. And so we had real good support from that. Where we have our problem, and it's getting more crystallized as my term was coming to an end, is the academic units. And the academic senate itself, the leadership has been pretty good, and 90% of the faculty is pretty good. But you have, I'm going to repeat myself, but a different example. You have these departments that are not necessarily even in critical race theory or whatever. You have departments like the rhetoric department at UC Berkeley, as an example, has sponsored 15 anti-Israel, anti-Zionist events in the last year. Okay, they've done 15 sponsored by the department. And I was going to mention to you that it was sponsored by the department, and they also basically want they question the legitimacy of Israel. And there's nothing on the other side. There's no diversity of opinion. And that is where we have to make marks, and it's a complicated question. It's easy to tell the president of the university, you got to fire these people. You can't do that. There's all these processes that take place. Matter of fact, one thing that's really disturbing to me, and I'm very close to the chancellor at UC San Diego because he's done a phenomenal job. He's the only one that went after a couple of the faculty members that led the encampments and encouraged students. The students got arrested. The faculty members are never disciplined. Why? Because who disciplines them? It's their own departments discipline them. We don't have, so what we have is a problem there, and UC San Diego is the only school that actually has carried through on discipline of faculty members that were not following the rules and doing this. The problem is, it's happening now, 2.5 years later. Justice is not served in a situation like that because the due process, there's so much due process, it destroys due process, and that's the problem. So anyway, that's another issue. That's the issue that I think we have to galvanize around and really help. And again, the Jewish Caucus has been incredible, and Jewish California, formerly JPAC, has also, we need sponsors. So people like yourself need to get, the fact that we're going to Sacramento, and talking to legislators is so important. And you have such a strong force in doing it. So we just have to realize how we can galvanize this, and I think our next issue is really these academic units and the politicalization of it and the lack of diversity of opinion.
Thank you. That's going to be an uphill battle and one that is very worthy of the fight. Sue, let's go to you. You mentioned in your opening remarks that kind of anti-Semitic behavior in labor unions was not something that started after October 7th, that there had been definitely elements of that before in different kinds of labor unions, and yet the teachers' unions have been kind of the ones that have really popped up lately with different votes and exclusionary tactics. Can you talk a bit about how the Jewish union members are experiencing this, kind of what role they're playing, how you're supporting them, and kind of where do you think our allies are at this point?
You changed the question.
Sorry.
That's okay. The question's been reframed. So let me just pause for
That's
a
okay.
second here. So yes,
I want to say something about this amazing effort that's happening that'll give you a moment to think. Because I think that people often forget that the Jews were part of forming labor unions. Like, we are labor people. And it has gotten lost. And so these Jewish labor leaders that are standing up and being proud and saying, we believe in organized labor, we believe in workers' rights, and hate is just so incredible. So I wanted to say that about Sue.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did not mention that we're a spinoff. The Northern California Jewish Labor Committee is a spinoff from the National, which began in the 1930s, and that was the origin. It was supporting labor generally, and that's what we do, right? We support the need of the community. So specifically in, you threw me with that.
You can go more broadly than the question.
So, there's been a lot happening in labor. I am like a 40-year educator. I retired as a high school principal. So yeah, I saw anti-Semitism as a teacher. I was directly affected by it, and as a principal. They were one-offs. They were, a kid putting a swastika in a history textbook, and I had to have a conversation with them, one-on-one. Things like that. I tell a funny story. I caught a kid smoking in the parking lot when I was a principal, and I said, "Come on, let's go to the office. We need to call your mom." And he looked at me and he said, "This is a Jew school." And I went, "Oh, is it? How nice." But what do you mean by that? You know what I mean. He was just really pissed off that I was going to call his mother. Anyway, his mom was really nice and horrified that he was saying things like that and that he was smoking in the parking lot. So those were my one-offs and the conversations I had to have with kids and families. The explosion, though, after, and now we're a 5-union district. Until October 7th, I would say we had really good relationships. The union leaders, the unions, we formed a committee called the Solutions Committee. The labor leaders got together. We worked together to solve problems that were district-wide. After October 7th, there's been a chilling effect with one union, and that is the teachers' union, the United Teachers of Richmond. The leadership of that union, the president, I've seen at city council meetings in Albany, Berkeley, and Richmond, wearing a keffiyeh, supporting, I don't like to call them the opposition, and saying some very anti-Semitic things. He is the leader of that union, and he got the union to change the bylaws this year so that he is extending his term another 2 years. That is the number one issue that we have in the school district, and that is union leadership. As a union person, I have to call out. There's positive and negative happening. That is a big negative. I am a union person. Was a part of the teacher union and helped create the administrator union. Our administrator union is the fourth union in the state, the fourth administrator bargaining agreement with the district in the state of California. There are many more now, but we were one of the first. What I would say going forward for everyone in this room and for us, my position allowed me, I'd already built relationships in the district at the State Department of Education. I knew Tony Thurmond, I knew Cheryl Cotton, I knew Liz Sanders, called them all immediately when all of this started happening to have a conversation and let them know what was happening on the ground. I talked to every department lead from the superintendent on the way down to the principals at the schools in my district. I also talked to school board members. So immediately within weeks after October 7th, I had made all of those connections or reconnected with all of those people and let them know what was happening on the ground. What I would say to everybody here in the original question is what would I say to this room is continue to develop those relationships, talk to people, build the personal relationships with everybody you know. Don't be silent. That has been one of our greatest enemies, is silence. So talk to everybody, because now when I call them, they're, hey, Sue, I've built a relationship. I've done it in a friendly way. I've let them know exactly what is happening, and that I'll be back and present. So they know I'm there, but I've, relationship. Continue to build those relationships with organizations. Like I said, I connected with ADL, with Stand With Us, with JCRC, and now Jewish California. Build all of those relationships, get involved, go, and so people know who you are. And when you need to call them for something, they know exactly who's calling them. Thank you.
I have to say one thing, which is to thank the legislature again in our context with unions. So we have a lot of unions at the University of California, as you know. Many of them, represent workers, do a great job. During the whole process with the encampments, the United Auto Workers, which, believe it or not, represents the graduate students. We have the largest auto worker union in the country. It's not Detroit, it's here in California. But anyway, they crossed a line at a certain point, in my opinion. And they began, because of their membership being graduate students, they were supporting all the encampments and everything. And I'll tell you, so it was very disappointing, but very encouraging when members of the legislature sort of helped us in that situation, because that union should not be advocating a political solution that is outside of their purview. And so, again, I think while we support unions, we have to be careful that sometimes they go out of bounds, and in this case, they did, and we responded.
May I say one more thing? So, a shout out for everyone who helped with AB 715. I think that's huge. Something happened last week. Absolutely. Something happened last week in our school district, and this is what's happening now. At first, it was overt anti-Semitism. Now it is not overt, but we know underlying it is a very anti-Semitic sentiment. One of our principals had to eliminate the ethnic studies course from her master's schedule because of low enrollment. Our district is over $100 million in debt. So courses that don't have enrollment are being eliminated if they're not a graduation requirement. So she did that. She met with every single teacher on the staff and explained what was happening with the master's schedule. They weren't happy. They want ethnic studies. The union president has posted in 4 of his newsletters that they will not stop pushing for ethnic studies. And the 15 of the teachers, he got 15 of the teachers to blockade the principal in her office. The next day, he posted a article in his newsletter. So he was ready for this. This was a planned action. We take it as the union that supports her, we take it as a violent act. She was blockaded in her office for over an hour before any help got there. And he posted in his newsletter, quote unquote, "We will not be ignored." Has anyone watched the movie that quote comes from? Fatal Attraction, right? That's a call for violence. And so that's what we're dealing with now. Initially, teachers left, Jewish teachers left. We had a Jewish teacher go from our district to Marin because of anti-Semitism at her school and not feeling supported. And there were several others. Parents have left and put their kids mostly in Jewish schools. Okay. So that's what's happening now. It is shifted again to, and we're seeing a rise in this push for ethnic studies. That's where the battle is now that I see in education at K through 12. So just FYI, we need to keep our eyes and ears open and be present for that fight.
Thank you. Sarah, you're going to take us to a different frontier, which is online. This has become really a dangerous hotbed of anti-Semitism that has been very hard to identify and stop, between bots and real people and all of the things in between. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of the work that you've done with the study you mentioned with Manchester, and then also the hate for sale campaign that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can talk a little. I'll talk a little bit about a number of our reports that we've done. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about a report called Home for Hate. It was a joint report with the Jewish Council for Public Affairs. It looked specifically at X, the platform, and how it was a major engine for anti-Semitism. We looked at about 679,000 anti-Semitic posts that were analyzed. And from that, we looked at the influencers. I mean, unfortunately, as you all know from your own lived experiences, that there are people who make their business being an anti-Semitic influencer and promoting this content. And 9 of the 10 anti-Semitic influencers that we studied had their largest following on X. Platforms are no longer, when internet was first created, when I was a child, you had, message boards, and internet companies were very passive, right? You would post something, it would be hard for a platform to get into whether or not it was defamatory or not. Nowadays, platforms are very much using advanced algorithmic systems to recommend and push content on individuals. And unfortunately, outrage and extremism and hatred and misinformation about the Jewish community is very engaging. And that is why it has become a core business model for these platforms. When I think back to when I was in college in the late 2000s, I'm Irish Catholic, as the surname suggests, and I had to do a research study for a political science course where I looked at white supremacy and anti-Semitism in America. And I had to go and do explicit Google searches to find out. I remember that there was this white supremacy group that was sort of trying to be like a Mary-Kate and Ashley or something, and they had these sort of blonde children and these Aryan children, and I remember being just horrified at the time that this existed, but I had to go seek it out. As we know, that has changed today. Anti-Semitism is pushed into mainstream feeds. It is no longer on the dark webs of the internet. There was an AJC statistic that showed that 45% of Americans generally, the general population, so not just the Jewish community, are seeing and hearing anti-Semitism, and that nearly 3/4 of those individuals are seeing it online. We also are looking at the new role, unfortunately, that artificial intelligence systems are playing. We just put out a report called Killer App that tested the 10 top major chatbots, such as ChatGPT, and how it was helping 13-year-olds, so we created teen accounts, plan violent attacks, including an attack on a synagogue. And 8 of those 10 chatbots actually helped facilitate the attacks. And in one situation, the chatbot actually ended a conversation by saying, "Happy safe shooting." This is unfortunately not hypothetical anymore. We've already seen up in Canada, and then just very recently at Florida State University, mass shooters are turning to these chatbots to contemplate doing an attack and then actually trying to execute it. In the Florida State University situation, actually sharing a post of the gun that they were using on how to disable the safety. And then like minutes later it went and killed people. And so there is, again, this gets back to my point earlier though, that these are the hope and the harm here is that these are platforms that are run by human beings, and these are policy decisions. In the case of ChatGPT, OpenAI did get advanced information about some people who were using it for mass shooting purposes and didn't alert it to the authorities, and then that could have been prevented a massacre, a tragedy. So next, I want to talk a little bit about the Manchester attack in the UK, where an individual ran a car into a synagogue and also engaged in stabbing afterwards, unfortunately taking the lives of Jewish individuals. And after the attack, we did a study looking at the surge of anti-Semitic abuse that the Jewish community experienced in London for just even expressing grief and about what happened at the attack, and that then there was those false flag conspiracies about it being manufactured by the Jewish community to have this attack on the synagogue. But we were able to do this research, and we were able to work with local Jewish organizations in the UK, and to share that with in the UK system, there is a British regulatory agency called Ofcom that does have an online safety bill. And we were able to share our research findings looking at X, and that was resulting in an investigation on the platform itself. And so that shows the sort of the theory of change with how CCDH, the organization I work with, works, is that we create this research so that we can show policymakers about what's actually happening on these platforms to try to bring change. In the United States, as I mentioned earlier in my remarks, states are very much limited by Section 230 at the federal level about what can be done for platform responsibility. However, we are seeing, thanks to these amazing, brave parents who are bringing lawsuits successfully, that we are cracking open some of Section 230, and it is allowing for states to come in, including here in California. The California law around child safety was upheld, and so it is constitutional, and so there's going to hopefully be more work done by the amazing Assemblywoman and her colleagues to try to create guardrails around platform, because self-regulation is just not working. Self-regulation was a choice, so for the specific harms that are happening on meta platforms like Facebook and Instagram, they bragged about getting rid of some of their moderation policies at the beginning of 2025. They bragged about allowing hate to be promoted on their platforms in the name of free speech. And unfortunately, as we know, as I've mentioned earlier, it's not just the words on the page, it's that these are leading to violent attacks in the real world, and that there needs to be some responsibility for that. So we do have an office in DC. We also are working on anti-online scams legislation in Albany right now. I'm actually going to be doing a red eye tonight over to Albany, but we really much want to be working here in California, and to be able to work with lawmakers and with the Jewish community here in California to be able to have our research impact policymaking here in the state.
Perfect. Thank you. Do you have those studies are on your website?
Yes, you can check ccdh.org, and you'll be able to see our various studies. And you can actually, there's a lovely little filter that I use every day almost, where you can, whatever topics are of interest to you, because as you know, you're also parents, you're also, some of you are seniors, that you might be impacted by different types of online harms.
Great, thank you. Assembly member, you're going to bring us home. Ready? I'm ready. Okay. Tell us about AB 2664. We're going to lobby for that later today, the Safe Worship Zone Act. What was the impetus for creating this bill for you, and why did you feel like it was necessary for our Jewish institutions and beyond?
Well, we've brought you all down with all this sad talk about the anti-Semitism in the world, and I guess I get to finish with, okay, what do we do about it? There is hope. We are the hope. You are the hope. I mean, this room, when I walked in, I was just floored by how many people are here. I mean, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. We walk those halls every single day, and having you here really makes a difference. But the answer is we can change the dynamic in California, and this is one piece of it, but I will say, you heard Rich say that every single one of the regents stood with us as a community, and they were not all Jewish. And part of that is we come from a different generation where education was different, where people were taught about the Holocaust, where they understood our community in a way that it appears this generation does not. And so I do want to shout out work that has already happened. Anita Friedman is here. She has led the governor's working group, it probably has a fancier name than that, on Holocaust education, and is leading the way in ensuring we are teaching California students about not just Holocaust, but Holocaust and genocide education. And my colleague, Assemblymember Ramos, sits on it to lead us in Native American genocide studies as well. And so the cross-community piece is a really important one. But that work is so critical. We have to build an understanding to end this hate, and Anita's leadership there has started to change the dynamic, and so I want to thank her for what she's done already. And so, that's a step of it. We've mentioned 715, obviously putting protections into place so that people who are being harmed, I think LS snuck out, but but our students who really came to us and advocated for that work, and we fought like hell to get it, and you were on our side, and somehow we achieved it. There were many days we never dreamt it possible, but we are here, and it is amazing. It is now law. The courts have upheld it. We are going to see, hopefully, changes in our schools. So, we continue to look at how we can both positively impact people by helping them understand our community and deal with the hate when it arises. And so, I think the issue arose that this bill is trying to address, mostly actually in Los Angeles, and as you know and heard, I'm a Northern California member. Interestingly, and many of you may know this, my brother is a rabbi at a San Francisco synagogue. We might have some Emmanuel people in the room. And they have an entrance very similar to what we see in LA. In my synagogue, I'm in a suburban synagogue. You have to go through gates. It's like really hard to get to the entrance. And so it's a little bit of a different dynamic than our urban synagogues, where you have to just walk up and walk in, and people can block you, people can harass you, people can stop you from getting your children. As you know, many of these synagogues have preschools, and that's what we were seeing happen in LA. And I had led the way on the buffer zone work in the legislature for abortion clinics. And so making sure I have in my district the abortion clinic that provides the latest term abortions in the Bay Area. So despite the fact that it's in Walnut Creek, California, which you wouldn't think is a hotbed of protests, it gets the most protests because we do, frankly, the most abortions. And so I had led the work in how do we protect those patients who are entering and exiting the clinic and should do so safely and with respect and all of that. And so when the Jewish community was, frankly, experiencing something very similar, walking into their synagogues and being harassed and not feeling safe, my colleagues actually looked to me and said, "You've done this before. Can we do this for the Jewish community?" And so we worked with Jewish California and other leaders to craft legislation that, frankly, is narrower than what we've done for abortion clinics, although the abortion clinic legislation does apply to our houses of worship as well. So there is a buffer zone around houses of worship today in California. But this bill that we're moving, and this is a really important point, because when you go walk into legislators' offices, they will challenge you on the First Amendment. They will say, "Oh, these are city streets. Shouldn't people be able to pass out leaflets and protest?" And the answer to that is yes. I mean, I'm probably not alone in this room. I believe all of us believe in the Constitution and the First Amendment. And so what this bill does is it says if I'm walking into a synagogue, you can't walk up to me. I get a bubble zone. It's my personal space. You can stand over there within the 100 feet and stay 8 feet away from me, and you can say what you want. And you can, again, you can't threaten me or do things that are already illegal, but you can't come into my space. I have personal space that allows me to enter and exit my house of worship safely. And that bubble zone concept has been upheld in other states. The Supreme Court has upheld it. The fascinating thing is one of the pushback I've gotten is that, well, that was a different Supreme Court. But frankly, I think we have a current Supreme Court who likes worship way more than any previous Supreme Court. So as much as this isn't my Supreme Court, I think that if protecting houses of worship is probably a pretty safe place to go with this Supreme Court. And so I'm confident that they will uphold what has already been upheld in precedent. And so that is what the bill does. And it's frankly really simple and I think should be non-controversial. The First Amendment right is protected, but I have the ability to walk in and feel safe, and you're not going to come up into my face or my child's face and stop me from entering the synagogue. And you heard from the rabbi who came and testified. That might have been his first time testifying in the legislature, and did an amazing job of speaking for his congregants who have experienced this firsthand. But we just see a rise in this. And I will tell you that one of my colleagues in the Senate who is not Jewish, so Senator Grayson, who is my senator, he supports abortion rights and was being protested. Really, he goes to church every week, and the protests against him were so bad outside his church, he considered not going. And so he is actually a huge supporter of this because he will tell you it crosses faiths, that this is not specific to us, and that he believes that we should all have the right to go into our houses of worship safely. And so he has offered to be of as much assistance as possible in the Senate, which I really appreciate. So that's what the bill does, and I think it's really important, but it's just another step in saying, we are educating people. We want them not to hate us, but to the extent that they are going to, we have certain rights that will be upheld, and California is going to stand with them. And it passed out of both committees with very strong bipartisan support so far. So we are very optimistic that the bill will continue to move.
Great. Us too. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move to Q&A. Evan has a mic, and he can walk around. Please ask a question, and also make it appropriate for the panelists to answer, and keep it relevant to this topic. So thank you. That's my ground rules. We can start right here.
Hi, Diana Honig. I have a question about the attack that I'm seeing at the college level on our Hillels, and trying to say that they don't have a right to exist, and you know, they're starting to be attacked. Where do you see us going with that in terms of addressing that issue?
First of all, we have 10 Hillels in our UC campuses. All of them are vibrant. All of them are getting stronger. We have really good leadership. Dan Gold at UCLA, Karen Perry at UCSD. We can go on and on the list. None of that's going to go anywhere. We're going to be there. We're going to be stronger than ever. Hillel is not, we have every right to exist. We do a great job. Hillel does a great job. I think the University of California, the president's office, supports all of it. That's noise as far as I'm concerned. And it's not going to go anywhere.
And I'll tell you that we actually have meetings on occasion when we've heard that this is coming to light with the leaders at the Hillels, specifically the UCs and CSUs, to see how we can support them. So I know there are Hillel leaders in the room, but we invite them to come to us because those are important community spaces, houses of worship, and they deserve the same protections as any other one.
The only thing I would say is the people in this room, if we have a hint of something like that or any other issue, it's so important for you to get involved the way we are all doing, and myself, we're doing the lobbying, because we have incredible state legislators who need that kind of, it's really helpful to have that kind of support. So when we hear of things like that, I think it's really important to be, very active on that.
Thanks. Gonna go back there. That's you. Yep, right there. Raising your hand. Yep.
A wonderful panel. So I teach at UCLA, and after October 7th, we tried to pull together a group that was diverse to be able to talk to our first-year medical school class. That translated into, and in fact, my wife and I had over the entire group for dinner beforehand so we could make sure that we were moving in a very positive direction. That translated into me not teaching in the medical school anymore. And I think we can trace it back specifically to those who are working within DEI, within the medical school, within the campus, within the broader group. And I'm not trying to call them out as much as ask, what work are we doing with those forces to try to get them to again collaborate with us rather than be our abject enemy?
So as someone who, as a woman, but just as a person in the world, strongly supports diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, but understands that not everybody who's been leading those efforts understands our community and our place in it. Now Congresswoman Friedman, I know we have some LA people in the room, so love that she's in Congress, thank you for sending her, did a bill a couple years ago that specifically required, at least on our college campuses, that there be anti-Semitism as a piece of what the DEI coordinators have to focus on, and that bill was signed into law. And so we basically said we support these efforts, and it's an and you need to understand our community, and they deserve protection. And so there are some efforts at the UCs to do that. We also, and Rich can speak to this more than I can, but we've taken some budget actions to deal with some of this. So we actually withheld money from the UCs until they had safety plans for Jewish students, and that was really done by that group of leaders. And they did eventually get the money, but we were willing to use the power of the purse that we hold to ensure the safety of our students.
That's funny that you mentioned that, because actually I was going to mention it today because it's a little known fact, but the legislature took some really strong action on a couple of items, withholding money on, basically giving money to the UCs on condition that they do the that they actually enforce the time, place, and manner restrictions. And that just shows again the importance of us being here because we have such a strong support from the legislature, the Jewish caucus, Rebecca, and also Jesse Gabriel, who is just so incredible and really worked this really hard. So
And Scott Wiener was budget chair in the Senate at the
Right.
time and was a huge leader in that as well.
Right. So in terms of DEI, I understand, I will tell you this. I'm a strong believer in DEI, and I've been on 6 chancellor searches, and I can tell you the purpose of DEI, for our purpose when we were doing chancellor searches, is to get a wide range of people. But then once you get in the room and you interview, you go for the best person, no matter what. So in my experience with the DEI, it worked really well. I understand that there have been some, the DEI movement went and excluded sometimes dealing with Jewish students and some of the stuff that was going on. I think that is changing radically, and I think that's really happening on the UC campuses. I think it's getting back to what the purpose is of DEI, and it's narrowing and also expanding its purpose with Jewish students and including Jewish students. I think it's a battle that we've been fighting, but I think we're winning that battle, and I think it's getting a lot better.
And I will say, I want to reiterate what was said about the chancellors, and obviously Berkeley is the one I know best. I have nothing nice to say about the way the prior chancellor handled Jewish students, and I will say that the current chancellor is phenomenal, and he has been an amazing partner, listens, calls, and those leadership changes are changing the campuses, and I think that I really want to thank the regents for that, and the office of the president.
And I just will say, Santa Barbara, much better. Riverside, much better. And LA, much better. Berkeley,
So
much
come back.
better. And nothing against the ones that were there, but we have done much better, and I think it's improving.
Great. Evan, right behind you, this woman. Yep. Either one.
Okay. My name is Debbie, and I live in Palm Desert. And I have just kind of 2 questions that are connected, just as a follow-up to the Hillel. You use the word support. What is your definition of how it is that you actually support the students? The second thing pertains to marketing. I know about Jewish California, and this is my first time attending the conference because I'm majorly active in the Hadassah organization, JNF, Stand With Us, Jewish Federation. But yet I have not seen one piece of marketing material anywhere in the Coachella Valley, in any of the shuls, in any of the buildings. We have a big federation building, a new CEO, advertising Jewish California. I have relatives in Irvine. I go there to visit. I have not seen one piece of marketing information in any of the Starbucks, anywhere where you see the average newspapers, even in the Hillel places at UC. How do you handle marketing?
David, I think you should hire her.
Maybe I should answer
Yeah, I
that
was like,
question.
Evan, I appreciate that question. It's not quite relevant for our panelists, but
look-
Evan, maybe you can.
The support question
quickly.
we can answer. So the question was, how do we support? And I assume that was for me, but maybe it was also for Rich. Okay, for me. So that can mean a lot of things. Frankly, at schools where we've seen more larger struggles, we've done budget actions to help those communities. So, it can mean that. It can mean legislative fixes. So if there's something that's not working on our campuses that we can do legislatively, we have a lot more power at our CSUs than our UCs. There's a constitutional mandate that says we can't control what happens on our UCs. So we often have to use the power of the purse more than legislation. But it depends on what the problem they're seeing, and we will use all of our tools in our toolbox to try to help our Jewish students on campus. And I do want to give a shout out, because we haven't yet, to our governor. He has been, all of the things we have mentioned we have done, he has been supportive of. He has never hesitated. He has just been phenomenal as it relates to the Jewish community.
Great. Gia, I see you.
Hey, thank you. So I'm here with San Francisco Bay Area Jewish Family and Children's Services, and our Center for Children and Youth, working closely with Jewish California and many of the state and national Jewish organizations that combat hate, have been working on the issue that you mentioned, Sarah, and how to regulate the online platforms to stop pushing such hateful content. And it has been a slog. And it's like one step forward, two steps back, two steps forward, one step back. And so my question is both for you and for the Assemblywoman. Bills like your colleague, Assemblymember Lowenthal, previously Nancy Skinner, to move forward these common sense reforms that are bipartisan, keep getting, blocked by the tech companies and whomever else that wants to say free speech. How do you think we can really crack this, this issue, and what advice and partnership would you like to see from all of us?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I will also note, Assemblymember Gabriel had a bill a few years ago that would have required the social media platforms to report on hate speech. That was overturned by the courts as well. So to your point, we're having a really hard time in the courts because of Section 230 of Communications Decency Act, which says that the platforms have no responsibility for other people's communication on their platforms. So we do need Section 230 modified to give us more tools in our toolbox, and the First Amendment is another tool that the companies have used. That being said, I second what you heard Sarah say about these new lawsuits. The new lawsuits are using product liability. So, and that is because social media has changed. We all are probably old enough to remember when Facebook first started, and it was truly a timeline. It was the last person to post was what you saw, and it was people's dinners, and it was super boring. And now they use these algorithms, and the algorithms are their design. So it isn't that we're necessarily talking about the speech of someone else. We are talking about the way they are building a product and their design choices, and a lot of the discovery that is coming out in these cases are showing that it's intentional. They are intentionally feeding us anti-Semitic hate because that gets more attention and it keeps you on the platform longer, and they make more money if they keep your attention. And so the recent case in LA and New Mexico that found against the companies on product liability grounds is hugely, hugely impactful in this conversation. We are looking at the question of how we can strengthen the product liability piece, because it seems to be where the chink in the armor is. And I think that is going to hopefully lead us in a direction where their responsibility as it relates to the algorithm becomes a real question of liability, and it changes. What can you do? So I am, for those that don't know, I chair our Privacy and Consumer Protection Committee, which does all of our online technology policy. This is what I spend all day and all night working on. The AI stuff as well. We're having much more success because Section 230 does not apply to AI, so we're getting ahead of it on AI. Good news on that front. But we need your voice. Last year I had a bill that they didn't like, and so they spent millions of dollars over 1 week to lobby against the bill. I won. Because the people do not like what is happening online, and we represent the people. And so they are spending hundreds of millions of dollars in elections and lobbying, trying to change that dynamic. But at the end of the day, our voters feel a certain way, and they can't change it with all of their ads saying that data centers are good. Those ads are bizarre. So we need you to speak up on the online question, because your voice is the only thing that will counter the hundreds of millions of dollars that are being spent by these companies to stop our legislative efforts, to end the hate, to end the anti-Semitism, to end the mass shootings. The bill that they spent all this money on, I got through the legislature with bipartisan supermajorities in both houses, despite millions of dollars spent lobbying against it, and the governor vetoed it. And so we're back at it again, because I will not give up. I've got 5 more years, you guys, and I'm going to use every single one of them. But this is an uphill battle, and we need the public to be calling their legislators and telling them to do the right thing on this. And so really getting engaged is critical, and maybe this is something Jewish California wants to put on their platform for next year, because it is impacting this community. So, David, expect a call.
I just want to add that you're an amazing Assemblywoman, because I just gave you an A+ for that answer. She just answered all of that amazing. So thank you so much for doing my job better than I can do, and thank you for your advocacy. And I would just say that the momentum is working. The work that you're doing, the work that these parents are doing are working, because where Meta has invested advertisements to brag about their great protections for kids are Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and Speaker Mike Johnson's home district. And so that's how you know that you're having an impact, and so California is having an impact.
Thank you. We are unfortunately out of time. We could probably be here for a lot longer. These panelists have been amazing. You are a wealth of information, and thank you so much for being here and for talking to all of us and all the work you do.
Hold on for one moment.
We are going to head into our lobby training and practicing sessions for this afternoon. If you look at your name badge, at the bottom left corner, you'll see your lobby group number, and that will match the table that you should go be at. We will begin in 5 minutes at 11:30.